Welcome to Inside PTI. On today's episode, we're going to talk about corn emergence timing. Once we plant the crop, we want all the corn to come up uniformly. In other words, all at the same time. And today we're going to talk about, do we get all the corn coming up at one time? And if we don't, how long is it taking? And so one of the things we're doing at the PTI farm is we have a flagging protocol. Once we plant the corn, we wait about 100 heat units or so, and we're really watching closely to this corn when it just pops up out of the ground. And when that happens, our PTI team is there with a series of flags. We're there that first day, we flag all the plants that are up out of the ground, and we come back every 12 hours. We're flagging plants at 12 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, 48, and then we have one blanket classification for 48 plus. So we're doing this to monitor, are we getting corn coming up uniformly, even, at the same time, or is there a delay? And if there is a delay, what is the cost of it? Is there a true cost, yield loss, yield penalty in the field? If you come to PTI in the summertime, you'll see some of our corn emergence flag testing blocks in the field. And that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. And get this, we talked about earlier, we want all our corn to come up evenly at the same time. And if it does, when we flag it, it should be one color throughout the field. And if you look on the screen right now, you'll see that we've got different color flags, and very few of these only have one color. And that means that corn is, in fact, coming up out of the ground, not being uniform or even. Here's a spot in the field where I went to, and you'll see the steel flag that I put in the ground. You see that next to that taller corn plant on the right. I was there 12 hours ago. That corn was coming up out of the ground. I flagged it. I come back another 12 hours, and there's a new guy coming right up out of the ground. You see him there on the left. So the question today is, this 12-hour delay in emergence, is there a yield penalty for this? And then the other thing I want to ask is, are we truly getting plants up out of the ground within 12 hours? In other words, from the first time, that first corn plant comes up out of the ground, are all the other plants up within 12 hours? That's the thing we're trying to monitor at the PTI farm. All of the work we did this past year, in 2020 at PTI, we found that 77% of our corn did in fact come up in the first 12 hours, which I think is pretty good. But what's that leave us? So we've got 18% of our population coming up, what I call the next 12 or 12 hours later, but 18% of that population is there. And then we have a fairly low population of the 36, 48, and 48 hours plus. Does it even matter? If we're not getting 12-hour emergence, is there a cost to it? And so one of the things we do, since we've got all the flag testing done in the field, all the plants are marked, at harvest time, we'll bring all the ears in and we'll actually weigh them and find out what the yield penalty was. We've got a corn sheller that we run all the corn through, we weigh them, and we can actually come up with a calculation of yield loss. The plants that come up 12 hours later, they'd actually be classified as a 24-hour emerger. We're losing 12%. And I think this one's interesting to me because you look at a 12% yield loss here, this is a 12-hour delay. So 12% yield loss over 12 hours. Is there a 1% loss for every hour? I've never tested that. Maybe it's something we'll do here at PTI in the future, but it seems interesting to me that we're at 12% over 12 hours. We go to 36 hours, we're losing 42% of yield. We go to 48, we're climbing up to near 80%. And those guys that are at 48 hours plus, we're losing 90% of yield. So pretty severe yield loss there. Here's what some of the ears look like. Now, to interpret this picture, I want you to look at just the top shelf. These are the ears coming from the plants that did in fact come up in the first 12 hours. And I'm going to say today, this is the best that we can do. Okay, this performance is the best we can do out in the field. So now, what's left? I mentioned 24-hour guys. This is going to be the next 12. They didn't make it up in the first 12 hours. It was the next 12. And we mentioned a 12% yield loss. There you can see what those ears look like, just a little bit smaller in size. It starts getting more severe when we go 36 hours out. You can see those ears look a lot smaller. We go to 48 hours, it gets to be a little bit worse. And then look at 48 hours plus. We've got almost barren ears, and that can be expected with that late of emergence. What do you suppose is the highest yield penalty? I thought this was very interesting as we calculated all of this data, and harvested all these ears. What we actually found is that the 24-hour emergers are, in fact, the largest yield loss in this particular study. And why? Well, they're the highest occurrence value, okay? And I went through every single replication that we had and just averaged up. Okay, how many plants do we have, and what was the actual yield loss compared to the guys that came up in the first 12 hours? The 24-hour guys, they were a 5 bushel loss. 36 came in at 2.4 bushel loss. 48 at 2.0, and 48-hour plus was at 3.3. But guys, the 24-hour emergers, that was the highest population. We're running 18%. And that's why, since there's so many of those plants, so many of those ears, it added up to almost a $19 yield loss on a per acre basis. So remember, it comes back to that occurrence factor. I got 77% of the plants up in the first 12 hours, and I'm saying that's the best we can do. So what's left? What I'm proposing today is, how do we get the next 12-hour guys? In other words, the guys that came up 24 hours later, how do we move them up 12 hours to be the norm? That's what we're looking at. That's what we're working hard at the PTI farm to figure out how to do this. Because right now we're calculating almost a $19 per acre loss by these guys that are coming up just 12 hours later. And this is pretty significant as we look at this corn trying to come up out of the ground even and uniformly. So today's Inside PTI agronomy tip of the day is uniform emergence is critical for high corn yield. 12-hour uniform emergence this year in our studies, we're at 77%. We're going to say that's the best that we can do. Just a 12-hour delay was costing us 12% yield loss. 36 hours, we were at 42%. 48 hours, we were at 78%. And that 48-hour plus, not 100% yield, but pretty close at 90. And remember, the next 12-hour guys, the guys that came up at 24 hours, they offered the highest overall yield loss at near $19 per acre. Those are the guys we need to concentrate on to move them up. Speed emergence to the first 12 hours, and I think we can eliminate some of this loss. Remember, work hard to get proper planter performance. I think this is half the battle. You know, eliminate the lack of ground contact with downforce, sidewall compaction. Think about how we close, getting rid of air pockets, getting good seed to soil contact, and causing improper soil density. Those are things that will help get these plants up out of the ground faster and more uniformly. Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode of Inside PTI. If you have any questions about what we talked about, feel free to reach out to any Precision Planting Premier dealer, or you can send us an email at InsidePTI@precisionplanting.com. We'll see you on the next episode of Inside PTI. Thanks.